Welcome to From Dreams to Reality. Let the journey begin.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. I wish my son was here to hear that. He'd be thinking a whole lot differently about me. That was a little overwhelming, but thank you. This team has taken such good care of me in terms of making sure we have great space. And so welcome to all of you, and welcome to those of you that are at home. And we're here, so let's get started. And actually, thank you to Fitchburg State. This is just incredible space, and they are generous in that they allow us to use that. So I have a PowerPoint that I am using, and in your packets, you have this PowerPoint. I think there's only one slide that I might have added one piece to. Some people like to follow along and add their notes there. Others like to take their own notes on their laptop. Other people don't take notes, they're just listeners, right? We all have different learning styles. But with different learning styles comes just a couple of requests so that we can make sure the distractions are down. Certainly that your phone is, the ringer's off and the music's off, and what you watch, I'll be the one that has mine on. And just, just careful around sidebar conversations, unless it's a really good joke, and then I want it open to the whole group, okay? But sometimes people can't quite zoom in when they're competing with other conversations. So here is the bad news. This is my first training I've done on grant writing. Here's the good news. It is so important to me that this be worth your time that I put a lot of time getting ready for it. But what I learned in getting ready is we would really need to pack our bags and all go away somewhere for a week if we want to really get into the level of grant writing that I think some of you may want. But fear not, because I have a pretty decent offer at the end of our time together. So there are, I don't want to say I'm doing high level, because these are some really good tips. But I do want to just let you know that what we don't grab here today, fear not, because we're going to grab it somewhere, okay, down the road. All right. Anybody have any questions before I start that makes their learning or anything? The restrooms, if people don't know, you're going to go right outside to the right, and you're actually going behind this wall here, and that's where the restrooms are, okay? So feel free to get up and get drinks. Feel free to go use the restroom. But if you don't come back, I'm sending somebody in, okay? So let's get busy. A little bit about myself. I am finishing 4 years at NewVue next week, if you can believe that. I think I worked one day, and then I had Thanksgiving off and the Friday after. It was great. Great way to start your new job. But prior to that, I did maybe 28 years in child and adolescent mental health. And I was actually involved much more on a clinical level. And then I wanted a break from that, and I went and got certified as a training director. So training trainers, training people how to train, right? And then I went back to that place where I was doing clinical work. It was Perkins in Lancaster, and I became their chief development officer. So I was responsible for all the communication and fundraising and grants, but I didn't write them, right? I had a proposal writer, and then I proofed them. I didn't do all the legwork, right? So it wasn't until I got to NewVue that I became a very, very busy proposal writer for grants. And what I included in this time for tonight is what I wished somebody had told me when I was starting out, right? Just some tricks of the trade and tips, how to save yourself time, where to put your energy, all those sorts of things. So if you noticed, I think in the post for this, and I keep saying proposal writer, 99% of the population says, I'm a grant writer. You're not a grant writer, you're a proposal writer to get a grant. A grant's a thing, it's not something you do, right? So I, for the first 6 weeks of my new job, said I was a grant writer. Till somebody corrected me and said, you're a proposal writer, and it's grants that you're earning. So you could do all of humanity a favor, and from this point on, use that language correctly in terms of our sort of cohesive effort to get into grants. So we have a lot to talk about. And I'm hoping you're going to ask questions as we move through this. This was the slide. No, this wasn't the slide. I had this on my laptop. Excuse me. I had this on my laptop and I posted it. There was like only 2 people registered. And I posted this just to see what happened. And all these people registered, right? So what about that do you think resulted in people signing up? Right here, there's a seat. I'm glad you're here. All right. Anything else? Grab anybody differently? It's what? Yeah. Yeah. And this is what I wanted to portray. So I also serve as adjunct faculty at Fitchburg State. I've taught here for 5 years. Teaching in a college is very different than doing a workshop with people. I wanted people to know a couple things. One, I'm not going to be up here going wah, wah, wah. Can you imagine 2 hours of me? I'm not that interesting, okay? So we're going to be talking a lot amongst ourselves and just coming up with ideas, but then it's going to be a comfortable and relaxed 2 hours because I think we learn best when there's no stress, right? So we will go with that. All right. Let's see where we're going to head here. So I want to start before we do any sort of getting into the guts of proposal writing to talk about myths about grant writing and funding. Now, there's a lot of them, okay? I just put these up as starters. When you get money from a grant, you can spend it where you most need it. That's probably, there couldn't be anything further from the truth than that. When you get grant money, you have to spend it the way you said you were going to spend it. You don't get to say, oh, I said I was going to do a community garden project, but you know what? After I did a little, and they give you the money, after I did a little research, that wasn't really what the community needed. I think I'm going to go do this. You can't. You actually have to go back to your funder and talk about that change and see if they will honor using that differently, okay? So whenever you get money through a grant, you have to use it for what you said you were going to do with it. Why do you think it's not good to have one funder meeting all your needs? What do you think, Shara?
Because then if they change their mind, you have nothing.
Right, exactly. Anybody else want to add to that? You know, it sure does feel that way. You're absolutely right. So the combination of those 2 answers just nail it for us. You know, the first time out, I don't think I'd be too upset if somebody said, I'm going to cover that whole boat for you for 10K, all right? But you can't keep going that way, right? Your job in the next year is to start breaking that up because one person decides for whatever reason we're not funding in Fitchburg anymore, you are sunk and you have no relationships with anybody else, right? So keep that in mind. I'm not saying that we should necessarily have 10 funders giving you $1,000 to come up with your 10K, because that's a lot of people to keep happy. That's a lot of manpower in your part. Has to be a balance. There's no grants out there to fund my work. Anybody feel like that? People do feel like that? You should feel like that. Sometimes I feel like that. And I have access to a lot of tools. You know what? There is funding for almost, I think there's funding for almost everything, unless you want to, like, I don't know, crochet sweaters for penguins somewhere. I think there is funding for almost anything. But let me tell you what's absolutely blown up in the last few years is funding for individual artists, okay? That's the only reason why I'm standing here. If that wasn't true, I would not be doing this training because I would have no good news for you. Because I have only written grants as a nonprofit, right? So I have access to a lot of different, well, it depends, we'll talk about what the criteria is, but I do have access to a lot of different opportunities for funding. But this whole thing about funding individual artists, It's new to me. I don't know if anybody else thinks it's been around. Shara, I know you've done a lot of grant work. What are your thoughts?
There's funding for individual artists, but they're few and far between and fairly competitive.
Okay.
So, and like most other granting, you're more likely to get funded if your grant is serving the larger population, the larger community, and not just your personal pursuit.
Exactly. We're going to talk about that. Shara, thank you. So, but you may say there's nobody out there to fund my work. But what I'm hoping tonight we'll do is how to look at your work, to sell it in a way, right, that gets you funding. And that's one of the tricks of the trade. You're not being dishonest. We're just doing a twist to how we're going to sell our skill, our wares, whatever it is, our services, to be able to apply for more grants. And then this one, grants only go to those with the greatest need. Why do you think that is not true? Why do you think that is not true? It goes, Diane, it goes to those that respect the guidelines. Absolutely. Why else?
So you have to be able to prove that you can actually get the project done.
Mm-hmm.
More often than not, the money is not upfront, and so you have to be able to have the resources to do it before your project is done, and you get the money after.
Right. So you're reimbursed, right? Yeah. That's another thing that I don't deal with often. Actually, we do with some of the government grants, but I don't deal with that often in terms of the reimbursement. So grants only go to those with the greatest need. How many of you would give, if somebody close to you came and said, my ship is sinking, how many of you would be ready to hand out some money? Come on, Dan, you heartless soul. Why are you saying no? Yeah. Yeah. Kathy, did you have an answer? Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to put you on the spot. Guess you have a card in front of you. That's telepathic. Ooh. Well, that is by your nature. But let me tell you, grants don't give to you because you're desperate. I guess that's the point that I want to get across with that one. Okay? People don't give to sinking ships. They really don't, because they don't see it as their little piece of this sinking pie. What if you don't get all the other pieces of the pie, right? Then my money's going the bottom of the ocean. So you don't want to look at it as greatest need. There's a lot of different reasons why foundations and businesses and government grants support us, and we're going to talk about that, okay? What are some other ones not up there? What do you think might be another myth about either grant writing or getting the funding? Here you go. So you know what? Here's the thing. Good point, Kathy. Thank you. Right. You're right. And here's the reality. In some cases, I feel like some of my grants might be, and I'm saying this, I'm humble, but they might be a bit of a more of a slam dunk than Deb's, because I've been getting them from them for 3 years. I've shown them my stuff, right? They know that I stick to my word. They know that I use the funds. They know that I'm reputable, or my agency is. So the bad news is you might not get it the first time out, but that is not your reason to close that door, right? There's foundations that look at, what is your stamina? Are you going to come back, right? We said no last year, but are you going to come back? Or are you just going to go, nope, I'm done? So you do want to go back. And when you do get that grant and you're able to demonstrate what you were able to accomplish, you will build relationships with those funders, okay? And we'll talk more about that. What do you think, Shara?
It's the same thing that a lot of people have mistaken notion that they can't talk to the people who they're getting funding from and ask questions about what they want.
Mm-hmm. So Shara just jumped about 8 slides. But I got to tell you, this is really important. So I'm willing to do it now. So I haven't been grant writing that long, but I've been in fundraising and involved in grants for a long, long time. Long enough to know, believe it or not, that there was a time, whether it was the Greater Worcester Foundation or the Health Foundation, or maybe even Central, Foundation North Central Mass, that there was a really strict boundary between people writing grants and those that worked for the foundation. And never should you meet and smile or shake a hand, okay? It was very formal, it was intense, right? And I don't know if the intention was that they had to really maintain neutrality or what it was, but it was not a pleasant experience. When you wrote grants, you were like, I don't know, it was very anxiety provoking. Totally different world now, right? Totally different world. So foundations have gone through their own transformation to find out they get better results from their money when they engage the people that are spending it, okay? And the ability to call and ask questions, or the ability to send somebody a note to update them. So I got a grant from Community Foundation North Central to do an art project up in Athol. And I don't typically pop into my grant contact during the year, but this one, there was some really compelling pictures that I wanted to show Megan. So I just sent her an email and said, this project, I can't wait to write the end of year report. It's going to be the best one I've written. Here's some photos. That feeds their soul. They're behind a desk, right? They're not out there painting flowers with me, right? They need that stuff to sustain them. And believe it or not, they welcome it a lot. So very different relationships. It used to be very parochial, very, I don't know, straight, conservative, just, I don't know. And it's so pleasant now. So that's the good news. Any other myths? So one myth could be grant people are boring, strict, not fun. That's the myth, okay? Any other myths? What do you think, Shay?
I have one that I hope is a myth.
Okay.
Do they only give grants to nonprofits?
Well, no. Here's the thing. So when I do my grant research, and I'm going to talk about Foundation Directory, okay, as a resource, and that's in your notes, so don't worry about getting it down if you don't want to. I'm always focused on nonprofit, because that's all I've ever worked in. But I'm surprised how many grant opportunities bubble up that say to help a small business, to help a small business. Small business is another thing that has popped as much as individual artists, okay? I have never, before coming to NewVue, heard of an individual that is not a nonprofit get funded by a grant. And there's all these resources out there now. You know why? Well, why do you think? Why all of a sudden are we going to support artists? What do you have, Rosalie? Yep. Okay. Absolutely, I'll take that. What do you think? Is it DG? DG, yep. Yep.
I think it's also for the sake of diversity. I think like the same organizations will get grants over and over and over again, and there are large sections of the populations that will never work for a nonprofit but still have something to offer. So it's giving more people a voice.
Absolutely. Good one. What do we have, Guy?
So
I'll get you, Deb.
Artists benefit the community. Which they love.
How does it benefit the community? Revitalize?
Right, people, because of the creativity attracts people and businesses.
Right.
But it is also really
All right. Here, so you know what? When we said they don't fund my work, well, you know what? You might not find a grant that has your specific niche in it, but you might find a grant to address issues of mental health, that you may use your craft or your art or whatever it is you do to address that, right? So we have to think differently. when we're looking at grants to see. You don't want to make them fit. When you stuff your shoe in there and it's not the right fit for you, it's going to be the longest year of your life. Let me tell you that, okay? So you don't want to do that. All right, now, good. I'm so glad you guys are talking. Okay. I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to give you just 2 minutes of work to do. What am I doing? Up or down? So real quick, this is the only sort of lecture, sort of boring info I have for you tonight, I think, is really just the different kinds of grants. So private foundations, who are they? Who makes up the private foundation crowd? Where does that money come from? Anybody know? Wealthy, right? Wealthy families. A lot of your rags to riches stories, right? Somebody that grew up with nothing and then had a company that just absolutely exploded. So those are typically family foundations, okay? And then corporate grants are your banks, your businesses, okay? And then government grants are whether it comes from the city of Fitchburg or Massachusetts or federal grants, those are a different beast we will talk about, okay? So I'm going to ask you to do an exercise real quick, which is on your next sheet. And it's the who, why, hold on. I'm going to exit for a minute. Think about something that you would want to raise funds for. And take a minute to jot down how you would answer the who, why, when, where, and how. Okay? I will be right back. In one shape or another, all those questions. I don't know that I ever write a proposal that doesn't include those. They just might look differently, okay? Who wants to throw out who their who is? Who are you going to serve? Who do you want to serve? Who do you want to serve, Diana? Children. Let's hear for some other folks. Who do you want to serve? Rosalie? Females of color, okay. Is it Keela? Kayla, okay. Youth? Excellent. Chara?
Marginalized communities.
Okay.
Income communities.
Yeah. Deb?
Garden Area League of Artists.
Garden Area?
League of Artists.
Okay, League of Artists. Excellent.
Those with developmental disabilities, like learning disabilities.
Legal artists?
No, developmental disabilities. Those.
Oh, I forgot your student.
Technically, I am. Yes.
So you're not sitting with the group, so you kind of threw me off.
So,
All right. No, we got it. Good one. Who did I say?
Domestic violence survivors.
Okay. Anybody else? Kat?
Neurotypical and neurodiverse early childhood who need individualized early learning.
Mm-hmm. Real quick, Kat, what is neurotypical versus neuro?
Neuroatypical.
Mm-hmm.
Neurodiversity.
Yes, thank you.
So everyone is on a spectrum of how they develop, and we have a current education system that separates kids with a diagnosis in one classroom and kids without a diagnosis in a different classroom, rather than integrating them and helping them learn together.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. Gigi?
Yeah. Okay, this is more of a question than an answer.
Okay.
Because I think my project would include so many different groups of people. Like the only thing that I could say they all have in common is they're all interested in looking at art. Like, is that even a valid answer?
It is. So that's a good point, because we talked about obvious groups, ages, abilities, right? Challenges, experiences, but you can also be serving a group that has an interest, right? in, dance or a particular field. That can be who you're going to serve. And it doesn't matter whether they're 16 or 72, right? So, what about your whys? Did anybody come up with why? Anybody come up with why? Diana, what'd you come up with?
Well, I'd like to write a cookbook for children, so teach them healthy food habits and ways.
Well, why do you want to do that?
Because they need it, because there's so many diabetes, everybody's so out of control, they need it.
Okay. So, now Diana just sold me, okay? But can you imagine how you're going to have to take that now? If you were to put that in a grant, you would really have to focus on the health issues, the what happens when kids don't know that, the potential. Why do they not know that? There's so much sort of pre-work, right? That the reader, because if you said to me, I would like your 5K because I want to write a cookbook for kids so they're healthy. Now, I know you wouldn't do that. I'd be like, what? Right? You're going to have a lot of meat around that, and we'll talk more about that. I hope we have a chance. What are some other whys? Not something, why? Why does it matter?
The group is being underserved.
Yes, a group's being underserved, absolutely. Any other why? Shay?
The reason for the project, the why for the project, is to help people who have left a domestic violence situation and how they did that and how they got through it so that it's therapeutic for them but also could help encourage others. And my personal why is because I am a domestic violence survivor.
So is your why because there's not enough services?
Yes.
Okay, so it wasn't what you saw, all that other stuff, right?
Stuff, but
you got to get to the why. And I'm
Got
picking
it.
on you, and it's a perfect example because I'm somebody that doesn't get to the why right away. I have to say, but why? I mean, a couple times, and have somebody say it to me. It's because there aren't enough services, Shay, that you want to do that. Because it's not like you're creating something new, right? We have domestic services all over our country. I'm sure some of them much better than others. But you see a real need, right? Maybe the need is expense. Maybe the need is, people in Lancaster, we don't have trains and boats and buses to get us out of there to go get treatment somewhere. So is it somewhere where people don't have access? Why? Okay. So when's pretty easy. We're going to do it in 2024. We're going to do it the first half. Usually grants don't go longer than a year. You might get a multi-year grant, but they're typically measured in years, okay? The where is pretty easy too. You're going to either do it in Fitchburg, or you're going to do it in Central Mass, or you're going to do it in a neighborhood. Gigi, what are you thinking?
I had a question about the when it has to be in the first half of the year, because I was planning for October. I want to have a full year too.
No, it does not have to be good point. I didn't mean calendar year, right?
Okay.
You might not get your grant till August, right? So and you do your budget and you figure out how they want to do their money. You might be just using it in 2023 and you get it in August, right? Or your year might go to August of 2024. Depends on how that grant, is teed up. And they're pretty clear on that. What do you think, Keela?
What if I am already doing this project? It's already running, and when it's already happening.
Yep.
Now I just would like help to continue and make it happen.
Because you picked up most of the expenses yourself?
Yes.
Okay. That happens.
it.
Yeah, all of it. So, you know what? Definitely that's a reason why. Typically, when artists or people that have their own passion, that pay for it out of their own pocket, start looking at grants. One, because they see the value in what they offer. Two, it's often to expand it. And three, to be able to just maintain your stamina with your passion. If you have, good grief, you have to worry about money all the time. How do you get out of bed? I mean, and I don't mean to be insensitive, but if that's your work and you can barely, make ends meet, I think people that, do grants for artists see that as, when we look at the budget stuff quickly, you're going to see, it asks you to include your salary. What is your salary? You got to pay yourself when you do a grant as an artist, okay? All right, let's move on here, because what time is it? I feel like I'm Dragon. No, all right. If somebody would, just ring the bell at 5 or 7, I would like to just take a break then so people can move around. So let's talk about opportunities and sources. Probably the biggest grant source there is the foundation directory. And let me just tell you right now, the bad news is it's pretty pricey. It's hundreds of dollars. The good news is, Leominster Library, you can go in and reuse theirs. Have you ever done that, Dan? You have?
My wife's a librarian.
Yeah. Yeah. You just go in and they plug you in and you can be there for an hour or 4 hours. Now, when I first came to NewVue, is it 110 degrees in here? Is it me? Holy crap. That's why I'm sitting down. I'm like, I feel like I'm going to melt right here in front of you. I'm going to need a break before 5 or 7, I'll tell you that. So
The foundation directory is not online.
No, it's online, but it's a portal that you have to access and pay for. Okay? Now, it's a lot. Typically, people don't. Actually, I don't have it as a nonprofit, right? So I get it through Philanthropy Massachusetts because I'm a member of Philanthropy Massachusetts. Okay? And I can't even remember what the membership is there. Don't worry about buying it, okay? You can get it, go to Leominster Library and use it free. I checked Fitchburg when I first came here and they didn't have it. Let me tell you, I think with the amount of grant writing that's going to be going on in this city, they are going to get it for you in a heartbeat. I really do. It's small beans for them. And I just think, huh? Yeah, there you go. So, what kind of beans? I don't know. Foundation directory. I don't know if it's like $500 for them to have a subscription or what. A subscription? To be able to get into the portal.
Like, is it a one-time subscription, or is it a recurring?
It's an annual.
You have to pay it yearly.
Yeah.
And I think it's more than 500.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure I'm outdated on that. Sure, absolutely. But it's really one of the best tools to be able to plug in information and see where you land in terms of what grants come up. Grant Gopher is also a source, and I'm not a big fan of it. The reason why I put it down is every once in a while I hop on it. I don't subscribe to it. I don't know how expensive it is. I wouldn't say it's your most credible one, but I hop on once in a while because they do that thing where, they show you the first 10 free, and then you got to pay, right? But if you got time, hop on, twice a month and see what are those 10 that are free that they're showing, because you do have access to them. Now here, this one, subscribe to newsletters. You're going to be surprised. That's where I get most of my best stuff is in newsletters. So, for example, I think, Massachusetts Cultural, what's on the back of what's one of the last pages in your book? It gives sources. What council? Is it a council? Cultural council? Higher culture? Well, Adam, help me out. Say it loud. Okay, thank you. I don't think that cost to belong. And that's actually the newsletter that I printed out for you today that always lists, grant sources and other sources. So whenever you are either in your trade, okay, and there's an option for a newsletter. We all don't like junk mail, right? But some of your best stuff is comes in those newsletters. Kim?
I was just going to say grants.gov as well.
Yes, yep,
It wasn't listed, but that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's accessible.
yep. And that doesn't cost anything. Yeah, absolutely. And then the other thing I would offer is to be a sleuth, right? And look on websites of people that do work like you or nonprofits like you. If you don't think I, once in a while, don't go on to every community development center in Massachusetts to see who's giving them the cha-ching. All right, I do. And I'm sure they're checking mine. Now, do I walk away with a whole lot? Maybe not. Why? Because those folks tend to give geographically, right? So here's the good news for NewVue. We're the only community development center in North Central region. So we don't have a lot of competition for those kinds of grants. But you should really, if you have any reason to believe that there are like people doing your work or similar, just hop on their website and hunt and see if they list their funders, because some funders expect to be listed, right? So that is another way to find them. And then my good friend Google, I kid you not, when I am desperate, people make fun of Google. When I'm desperate, or actually not desperate, when I'm bored, okay? Because I did it here, I was like, you know, grants in Massachusetts for writers, okay? And does it lead me to a grant? Sometimes, but more often than not, it leads me to a source, right? That I can grab the newsletter, or I can get on that source that then lists grants. So you got to be willing to do some time that you're just dabbling, just really getting into caves and finding things that way, right? Is that me? Was I like really cracking a joke that I'd be the phone that would go off? Oh my God, hold on. Did I just say that to you guys? I don't know who you are. Okay. So yeah, some people like, oh, why Google? It's always kind of high-end stuff. And it's not my first source for, you know, my high-end grant work, but it's certainly worth just checking out. So you've got to be able to do the nooks and crannies, and you'll be surprised, you know, what you end up finding out. Now, I'd be curious now when I go back to Foundation Directory, has that directory, which is through the whole country, has that kept up to speed with all of the individual artist grants that like the cultural councils have and the New England Art Association or some of those folks? It'll be interesting to see if they have kept pace with that. Any other sources that people, even if you haven't written a grant, but you found some sources that you want to share with the group?
National Endowment for the Arts.
Okay.
Philanthropy Massachusetts.
Now, Dan, what work are you in that you'd be using those? You're a writer?
I just write.
Okay, you write.
Yeah.
So, are you a member of Philanthropy Massachusetts?
No, but I've like used it to tool around and like look around and find some stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
And,
all right.
You know, it's about like really what Philanthropy Massachusetts is about is connecting grant writers or proposal writers.
Yeah.
With grant makers, and so
yeah.
It's like the perfect resource.
Yeah.
And like it's like what you emphasize. Like it's all about. It's a large part of it is relationships, and so just like find those people and start building those relationships and find as many as you can and start digging. You know, so.
It's so much the opposite, because remember when I first started talking tonight, I said, you know, 15, 20 years ago, you didn't have a relationship with your grant person. You were like not even supposed to make eye contact.
People want to know you.
Absolutely.
Before they even give you money.
They do.
Yeah.
People have invested in giving and supporting a person, right?
Yeah.
Not the document you gave them or you uploaded. They really, really are invested in relationships. And we'll talk about some ways to sort of wiggle your way in there, because that is easier for some than it is for others. So, because any other resources for where to look? And you know what? There's a ton.
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth.
Yeah, I was gonna piggyback off of that. Just like talking with other nonprofits, they let you know when there's a grant coming up.
Yeah.
Or things like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So we'll do this slide and then we'll take a break. So when you begin your search, if you right now went to Foundation Directory and said, I want to know all of the grants available in Massachusetts, you'd probably come up with like 3,000 or 4,000. There'd be a lot, okay? And then how would you go about narrowing that down? Now, you can apply for grants if they say anywhere in Massachusetts. Typically, there's fine print. What would you be your next step to narrow it down? Because you know what? Nobody has time for 3,000. I don't care how good you are. Huh?
The North Central Mass region.
Yep.
Those WH questions you had us answer earlier.
Yes, yes, yeah, absolutely. Worcester County is something that comes up. Because what's going to happen is when you do your search, you're going to go, oh, here's somebody that wants to give money in Massachusetts, and they want to fund my art project, and they want to do this, and it's going to be great. And then when you open it up, they only give to Cape Cod. Okay? If that doesn't happen to me 6 times a day, it happens to me 7, right? So that's sort of the fine print. You know, I don't go into my searches saying, tell me everybody that will give money for affordable housing. That's not how I start. I start with location. Some people don't. I think some people start with the cause. I start with location because I think if I'm not in their location, it's not worth anybody's time, right? And I think that's the key qualifier and disqualifier is where do they give? One more thing about location. So no matter where you go, when you go look at a grant, the first thing I look for is where. Where. I don't look at anything else. I don't care if they support Eagles, okay? I just want to know where do they give. And then if it's a fit, then I feel like, okay, let me see if it's anything to do with my work, right? After location, I look at what would come up next, do you think? Causes. I have it right in front of you. Okay, forgot that was on the notes. It's your cause. Like, what is your cause? Now, for some of you, your cause is domestic violence. Cause is kids on the spectrum and not on the spectrum, disabilities. Some folks are really committed to marginalized communities, right? That's their cause. So Shara might be an artist, but she's not necessarily looking for money to fund her art as much as she is looking to use her art to impact compromised communities, right? What are some other causes we have here? We did a couple of them. Do we have any other causes? Okay, absolutely, right. So you're probably considered like a small business. Do people take lessons there?
We could, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there are a number of different ways that you can write a grant for that, which is, and I have no idea where you're located, and I keep saying I'm not going to zero in on anybody's grant because it's boring to everybody else. But when I hear one, I go, boy, there's a different angles you could take, whether it is dance that needs to go into areas in which that isn't an opportunity to engage kids. Is it a grant for $10,000 so that 5 kids that wouldn't be able to swing the lessons could have lessons, right? You're still going to be paid for it. You'll still make money. But so there's a lot of different ways to look at that stuff, I guess is the point. And then if they are a fit with your cause, then it's what kind of funding do they do? It's rare that smaller grants or the kinds of grants that we might be applying for do capital, right? Capital is, we're going to give you $500,000 to build a building, or, you know, it's usually bigger money is capital. Project is project specific, and then operating is just money to operate your nonprofit or to operate your art business, okay? I have never in my life written a grant about art, okay? So I am really working through this with you. And if I say the dumbest thing you've ever heard about art in your life, if I already have done it and nobody's acting like I have, that's really good, okay? But if moving forward, you could go, you know what, could we just stop there? Could I just correct you? Because I don't like giving bad information. But I would have to really think, and I was really excited to get some emails from people around why they were coming. I was like, ooh. So now when I'm like bored on a Friday night, I will go looking at grants, and I will be looking for grants that have nothing to do with my work. They'll be about dance, or they'll be about domestic violence, or they'll be about art, or all kinds of different things. Anyway, some grants want collaborations. I hate those because I don't really like to work with other people. I'm kidding. But it takes more work to do with other people, okay? My style, I'm pretty controlling in my work. I'm like, bum, bum, bum. I got a way I want it done. You're going to bring your loosey-goosey. If it works, we're not making it. So collaborations are good, but they can be a challenge. So you might find somebody you're collaborating with that ends up being the person you collaborate with a lot. So NewVue collaborates a lot with the Economic Development Office for the city, for MOC, and other, Spanish American Center. I'm trying to think of some other ones. Not all grants require you to have somebody collaborate with. And I just put down think creatively when you're doing your search. Because if you don't think creatively, you're going to shut the door on everything, right? You're going to want this nice little fit. And then you're going to close the door on something that is just a maybe. So have your definite pile and have your maybe. If I'm desperate, I'll apply, right? Or just maybe if I have time. Doing your research, if I could encourage you to do anything, it's to be organized when you do your research. So to really take the time that if you came across something you were sure that was a fit and it isn't, just jot it down somewhere, type it somewhere. You will be surprised that you will look at that grant, I promise you, 6 times, thinking you've never looked at it. And you're like, oh my God, this one, I already know I can't do it, right? It gets really gray after a while. I'm a grant slob, is what I call myself. So I don't practice what I preach. I have like that grid, like here's the grant, here's the due date. So I'm going to back up 2 weeks. That's going to be when I'm going to have it done and ready to proof. I set that up. It is bomb-proof, okay? I'd sell it to any of you and you'd buy it. That's the easy part. The hard part is using it, right? And keeping it all up to date. Because if you get busy with your grants, you will be surprised how much you need that information organized. Any thoughts on that? Dan, you've experienced that, or at least agree?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Just like all the, because a lot of it too is just like background information. Like
Yep.
who you surveying, like the statistics and all that stuff. And you need it all in one place to go get it. So it's like it's organized and you're running 5 grants and you're like, where's that information? Where's that information?
Right. Yeah. I'm jumping around right now based on what I'm hearing folks say. So, I said, oh boy, this person gives in Massachusetts. When you're on a big database like Foundation Directory, you'll have these grants that say, we give in Massachusetts and Wisconsin. So, is there really?
Fitchburg, Wisconsin was where I was thinking of. So like you could fit.
I totally didn't know that, okay? I couldn't have nailed that if I tried. Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be awesome. But here's the thing. When we're going to have to spend more time together doing different things. But I just want to tell you, when you're in that directory, what it allows you to do is to go down and look at the funders, what's called 990, okay? And it's a form that they have to list who they've given their money to. Actually, 990s are public information. I think you can actually Google it. Can you, Dan? You can Google it and find somebody's 990, like a foundation. Like, let's say you want to say, who did the Greater Worcester give to last year or the year before? Here's the reason why that's the only reason why I use it, because I find it a very intimidating form because I'm not a numbers person. but I do use it to find out who they gave to. Because when I find that grant that's going to give me money for affordable housing in Massachusetts and Wisconsin, when I look down there, I'm going to see that 10 out of 10 grants went to Wisconsin. What does that tell me? It tells me that somebody somewhere remotely involved with this grant asked Massachusetts to be a recipient. What's the likelihood we're going to get something? Don't waste your time, okay? Really spend some time looking about in terms of where have they given. You can do that. You can find a foundation and go right to their website. And usually they list, here's our 2022 recipients, right? And find out what are they drawn to, okay? Anything else on that? I feel like I could spend days on that topic. Deb?
For nonprofit, or did they specify it's taxable or not taxable?
So nonprofits are not tax exempt. And I don't know how it works for an artist or somebody that has a business, because I've only done nonprofit grant writing. Huh?
If you're
Thank you,
a
Shara.
personal business like an artist, and you're a sole proprietor, if you get grant funding and it goes through your business bank account, then it is considered income and it is taxable.
Thank you for that.
And a way around that is to get a fiscal sponsor who is a nonprofit. And then if the money all goes through them, then it's not considered your income. Genius. I learned it the hard way.
So we need to talk more about fiscal sponsors. But you know what? We don't. Here's the thing. Everything we're going over here on today, as much as I'd like to make 10 more points on everything we're talking about, the internet is loaded with this stuff. You could Google, what is a fiscal sponsor? And you would get all levels of information about how they work, how they don't work, examples of people that have used them. So now we have Shara, who does know something about, NewVue is a fiscal sponsor for another entity that is not a 501c3. Nonprofit is, you're a 501c3. It means you're certified nonprofit. And that has to go in with all of my grants to prove that we're a nonprofit. So thank you for that. So Deb, did you like that answer?
Yes, I did.
You did, okay.
We're a 501c.
Oh, okay. All right.
Kerry, we're at 7:05.
7:05. So let's get up and move. And we can't turn the temperature down, because if we turn the temperature down, I'll stand up again.
Oddly enough, they control the temperature from Pearl Street.
Anybody know anybody at Pearl Street? All right, let's take a break. Let's just do something. Hop on your phone, get a drink, use the restroom. I got to see where. I have a lot to cover. I think I was in 4th gear. Now we got to put it in 5th gear to finish strong. We'll let folks find their way to their seats. I actually should have had this slide up or have you looking at that when we talked about fit. So we fit the Massachusetts, right? Any livestock farmers in here? All right, so I have a horse. That's the closest that we get to it, okay? I am not a livestock farmer. And you know what? I know the health of soil is important, but it's not something I'm going to put a lot of my time in right now. So I have no idea why I put that up there. But what you want to remember is that when you read it again. There's always fine print the second time, okay? Always fine print the second time. So let's actually talk about, now this isn't a writing class, okay? As in how to write. It's really the mechanics of a grant and things you want to keep in mind. Now, that doesn't mean I will offer help around when you get to write your grant. How do you put something across, or how do you make a point more compelling, right? How many people would say they're a solid writer, just in general? solid writer. Raise your hand, proud. Okay, excellent. I think I am a really strong writer. And let me tell you, I had to pay a lot of dues to get here, okay? So I had a boss that was like that 28 years who was flawless, okay? In grammar, punctuation, verb matching the noun, all of that, all of it. He was flawless. So I would write things, and my goal was to just get it back from him with less red ink than there was black that I gave him, black ink. So for those of you that don't think you're strong writers, there are ways to address that. There are ways to get past that hurdle. Do not think that not being a strong writer should put you out of the league for a grant. Because people are not giving you money. Well, they're giving you money to write, Dan, so you better be good. But in general, right, they're not giving you, they want to hear good, compelling, organized, professional thoughts. But don't cut yourself short if you are not a good writer. All right, let's get into the, I'm gonna pick up the pace here. I want to talk about the pieces of the puzzle. Okay, preface this, there are no two grant proposals the same. There's none. Now, if you go back to the Community Foundation year after year, you're going to recognize it. They don't change their applications often, but there's no two applications the same. Most applications today are submitted on a grant portal. You get a login, password, right? And you are uploading your information to a grant portal. Some, if you're using a grant portal, you're probably not going to be doing a cover letter. A cover letter which kind of introduces yourself with thanks them for last year's funding, we'll talk about all of those courtesies, is a nice introduction to why you're applying. You could tell them if it's a repeat grant, the impact they had last year, okay? Because what we're going to talk about in proposal writing, it's not about you. And it's not about your cause. Who's it about? Them, the funder, okay? That was one of the biggest mistakes in philanthropy. And even if I was going to ask somebody that was, clearly had some good financial ability to support something in a strong way, I don't go and meet with that person and talk about me or my need or my kids, right? Or my school or whatever. It's to talk with them about what is important to you. Like what makes you want to be involved in other people's work, okay? So cover letter is typically used if you are asked to put documents together and emailed, okay? And then I think I only have one foundation left. It is so old school, it makes me feel young. And I find them so daring. But I have to put all the packets together. They're very rigid. So it's an original and 3 copies, no staples, no paper clips, no colored paper in between them. And I have to get on my pony and bring it over to them, okay? Can't even mail it, all right? And they are one of the coolest foundations, but I'll tell you, that's how it used to be with everybody, right? If you had any experience of writing grant years ago, that's what it was like. There's just a few of them left, right? And I'm glad I have one, and I'm glad I only have one, okay? So your application and your cover sheet is typically all your data info, your name, your address, and email, and if you're a nonprofit, your tax exempt number. All that identifying information is typically what's included in your application or your cover sheet. Sometimes the application, I just did submitted one last night for Host Schofield, and the application included the questions right there when I'm saying overview of the organization, project description, it was right part of the application. For many, it's just an application is like all that data, and then you get into your project. So if you're a nonprofit, you're going to often be asked to provide an overview of your organization. And it needs to be high level, okay? You're not writing for funding for your organization. You're writing for funding for a specific piece of your organization's pie. And we'll talk about artist grants in a minute and how that differs from what I've been able to take in doing my research. Your project description, let me just see what I have here, is really the who, why, when, where that we talked about earlier. That's the meat of what's going in there, okay? Now, this is easier said than done, because now when you sit down with the pen, like the fact that I told you who, what, where, when, and how, that's going to be helpful, right? You guys, you write paragraphs, but at least it makes you ensure that you've answered all those questions. They have to be answered. A project description can be 4 paragraphs, or it can be 5 pages, okay? I've had to do both. It just depends on who the foundation is and what they expect. So again, there's no two that are exactly the same. Some want data. Some want to know what ages you're serving. Some want to know about diversity. For those of you just starting out, how are you going to answer a question about diversity? If you're going to do a grant, if you're applying for Creative Cities grant, who does that serve? Fitchburg? Okay, there's one. Excellent. If there's a question on there that says, how are you going to ensure that this money impacts a diverse population? Or tell me about your project and why it's likely to impact a diverse population. Oh, Kathy, did he steal it from you?
No.
Okay.
I was just going to say, what if you state where you're going to do your project?
Absolutely.
If it's in a specific neighborhood, then it's going to be to a specific demographic.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Excellent.
So if it's a poorer neighborhood, it's going to be that demographic, obviously, if it's going to benefit from that project.
You're right. So Kathy has one of the 2 answers. Is really, if you're narrowing down, you know, where your project's going to be, sometimes just by narrowing it down, it's pretty clear what the demographics are. But if you don't have if somebody says, how many people of color do you think are going to be involved? Well, you can't tell them the number because you don't know that. But you might do what Dan talked about and said, you know what, in Fitchburg, let's say anybody in Fitchburg can come to this event or whatever. In Fitchburg, 40% of our population is, you know, Latino, right? You can get some numbers very easily on our census information. It's all over the website to just be able to demonstrate that you've given this some thought, okay? Foundations like to see numbers. They like to see that you've done a little bit of research, okay? And you're not asking for money because you're a nice person. And you have to demonstrate need. And it's in that project description that you're going to do that. So I'm just going to go about 501c3 is a letter if you're nonprofit. Audit is like this many pages of boring information about your nonprofit's finances, okay? Artists won't be worrying about that. List of board members, artists won't be worrying about that. Now, project budget. I had somebody email me and said that they would really like some help with a budget. True confessions, right here and now. It's my weakest point, budgets. So what did I do? I hooked you up. And in your packets, there is budget templates that, is it Creative Works? I don't have a packet in front of me. I probably should. Hold on. That gives templates for visual art, for writers, for performing arts. Because you know what? That's another topic. Besides the fact that I don't think it's my strength, I mean, I could save my life if I had to do a budget, but I don't know that I'm the one that would be giving you the best advice on salary, right? But I think this is a really good tool to help you think about expenses that you probably might not have included in your budget, okay? Like paying yourself, Derek said. So like moving beyond that stage of guilt, or we're beyond that, right? There was probably a time that, you know, asking you to pay yourself, where they probably been like, what? But we are beyond that now, right? And there is a credibility to what you do, and it's a profession, and you should pay yourself. So I put those in there I just think they're a really good, easy to use tool for you to think about what you should be including depending on what your budget is. And if I might graciously get out of the fact that I'm not an expert at budgets, all of ours would be different. The conversation would be challenging because they're all different, okay? How did I do getting past that, all right? All right. So the artist one I just did a couple things on, okay? A lot of the, oh, wait a minute, where's my book? So here we go. I reached out to my good friend Google and asked for books on artists and grant writing and proposal writing, artist grants. And this is the one that bubbled to the top a lot, okay? And I had that carefully displayed next to my laptop when I did that post on Facebook. You saw it. And my coffee cup. Because it had the artist guide to grant writing. So I think I spent $14 on this. I bought it new. You can get this for like $3 used on Amazon, okay? I just felt like it was good for me because it was like layman's terms. Like, I don't know, it just was an easy read. If I'm not going to be able to read it and not have to decipher a lot of your artsy language, then it's not helpful to me. So this is where I learned when you're doing an art, thank you. When you're doing a grant for, writing a proposal for art, the things that they add in that you rarely do for a regular nonprofit grant is your resume, okay? So if you don't have one, I'd start putting that together, whether or not you're going to write a grant this month or not. Get your resume together. Come on, Kim, what are you thinking? Your resume is going to be how long you've been in the business. It's going to be how many people you've served over the last 10 years. Is it 100 dancers or it could be, yeah.
Experience, so it's
Yeah.
kind of like a regular resume.
Yeah,
for a
absolutely.
person.
Thank you for that, Adam. Absolutely.
Should folks include achievements also that they?
Yes, any sort of recognitions. Thank you, Derek. Absolutely.
Yeah, awards.
Mm-hmm.
There's
Mhm.
also, there's a difference between a resume and a CV. And a lot of times with art applications, they want your CV, which is like every exhibition you've ever been in, it's not just jobs you've had, but all of the creative experience that you've had. And there's sort of a list of like all of it.
Okay,
So
that's work.
Every artist should be keeping track of those things
Mhm.
and have a running list that you add to whenever you do a show or an exhibition or a competition or an event like that. It should all you should keep a running list.
Is that an artist statement or something different?
No, an artist statement is more of what your art is about and what motivates you to do what you do.
And that book has examples, and you can Google
I have like
what is
six
an artist statement, and
I
they
bet
bring up some pretty good
ChatGPT
stuff.
could find
What's that?
a good one. ChatGPT could probably give you a pretty good one.
Yeah. So those are some things that I am not familiar with. I certainly have a resume, but I have a teaching statement that I had to put together to teach for any sort of undergrad work that I do. And it's similar to that. It's like, what is my theory? What is my thinking? Or what do I hope people experience? But again, you can find information on that. And then work samples. And it may be similar to what Shara said, or it may be different in that they're looking for you to upload some of your writing, some of your art, a video of your whatever, okay? All right. Creative Capital, I think, is a resource I put at the back of your folder that has some grant options for artists. So let's talk about best practices, and we're going to fly. What time is it? Holy smokes, because you're getting out of here at like 8, like 7? Yeah, 7:59.9. You have kids, you're tired, you got to work tomorrow. So let's talk about best practices. You guys, this is so high level. You're going like, oh, I wanted more. But you know what? We don't have time to do more, but we'll find time. So remember when I began, I said it's not all about me. As much as I do love it when it's all about me, when you're writing grants or proposals, it's not really all about you. It's about the funder as well. And in your writing, you need to write in a way that engages and includes the funder. So I have used language like the foundation's focus on helping low-income families build some assets parallels well with NewVue Communities' mission, okay? I'm making it about them, right? So there's all kinds of language you can use that draws them in. But people do, just like when you write a thank you letter, it's about the person, right? It's not about you. People want to hear. They have egos, okay? And we need to feed them a little bit, and that's okay. So start preparing the application early. Oh my gosh. So, because you want to keep in mind, I bet for some foundations, for some grants you might be doing, particularly artists, I wonder if you need a letter of recommendation. That's not something I want to find out 2 days before it's due, right? I've done it. It wasn't easy. So really, really, really study that and start as early as you can. I always make it a habit. I don't like sending in my grants on the last day. Why do you think I might not want to do that? Well, absolutely, right? Here you go. So technology. Oh, I'm sure. I have this thing about, I don't like to do it last minute because I feel like it's a message to the funder, because right, it says what day and time it came in, stamped. I feel like it's a message that like I am so on roller skates that I can barely get this in at 10:59 at night because it's due before midnight, right? They probably get like half of their grants at that time. I just feel like it's a message that I don't have my act together, or I can't, maybe, I'm not going to take that risk that they may interpret it. I don't know that to be true. I'm making this up, right? But I'm not going to take that chance. What do you think, Guy?
So, when there's a deadline, does the funder collect all the applications and then read them after the deadline? Or do they read them as they come in? Which would, if that's true, then yours would get a more relaxed and probably careful read than
right.
if it came in with 50 others on the same day.
You know what? I think the answer, and I have no data, this is my gut. I think the answer is they wait till they're all in, and then because typically it's more than one person and they have a process. And because they have a deadline, they could give it more attention because they're not tired, right? But they really can't give you priority because yours was in 2 weeks early because I didn't meet my deadline, even though it was 10 minutes before midnight, okay? Good question. But I really do think they collect all of them and then figure out a way to. Yeah, okay.
That is the way that it happens, but I will say that often if they're cataloging them as they come in. So if yours is the first one in, it's going to be the first one they look at, and probably. Yeah. When you get,
they're cataloging? Okay.
Or 500, you're not paying as much attention.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, oh, let's just get it through here.
Yeah.
Or
I bet.
Before their eyes glaze over.
Right. Exactly. So.
I will say that as an administrator, that often it's the grants that come in, if they come in first on your word cataloging, not because ultimately it's not my decision, I'm bringing it to the next board. So, you know, keeping that in mind too. It's just, it's a matter of administrating it so that the next person could look at it, who's going to ultimately make the decision of who stays and who goes.
And that may be more rigid because you're doing city grants, Kim, right? You're not doing, the Crocker Foundation that they get together once a year and do their grants, but you have to prove fairness, right? An even playing field. Like the eyes are on you, right? So you have to have those systems that might be different than other foundations. So we want to follow the instructions and guidance carefully. So here is an instruction. Please keep this answer to 500 words or less. They mean it. They don't mean 501, okay? And it's usually 500 words to include, and when it's characters, it includes spaces, okay? 500 words is better than when you have to do characters. It won't. You're right. It does. A lot of times it shuts you off, but I do a lot of grants that don't go in a portal, and I have to do that word count. So, because I like it when I work my backside off and get all the questions done, and they all fit in, and then my boss takes a look at it, thinks it would be a great idea to just add in this nice piece that is now 20 words over, okay? So they are really, really clear on keeping to the count. If you're not uploading to a portal and they say 12 font, don't try to fake them out with your 11.5. Don't even try it. I know, I can tell some of you would be doing 11.5 right now. It's all over your faces because I've done it, okay? Don't do it. It's not worth the risk. Not worth the risk to change your margins. It's just not worth it, okay? You've worked too hard on this. When they say be brief, okay? We are not nearly as interesting as we think we are, okay? That is true confessions, and it's hurtful, but it's true. So can you imagine if you're not that interesting talking, like what your writing would be like for people? So when they say be brief, okay? And we will have more discussion on that at another time. All right, be organized and logical. So when I say be organized and logical, what am I talking about? Say that again, Char?
Don't say the details before you give the general overview.
Yeah.
General to specific.
Yeah. Yeah. General first, and then follow that by specific. So you don't want to talk about your project and where it's going to be or who you're going to serve, and then write a little bit about where it's going to be, and then go back and write some more about who you're going to serve, right? It just really has to flow. Answer the questions, and just keep it in a logical order. When they ask, in your project description, we want you to do this, 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 and this. You know what I do? I do a paragraph, or however much room I have, to each one of those. And I take those, we want to know who you're serving, we want to know how it's going to impact people. And I take it and I put it right in my document. So it's clear to them, this is what I'm answering, okay? There's really no room for them to go, oh, but she didn't talk about this. Because it's clear that I'm following what they're asking me to write about, okay? Any more comments on that? Okay. We have brief, concise, and clear. All right, here's a big one. Problems versus solutions. In your overall proposal, you want to make sure you're talking more about solutions than problems, okay? Now, clearly you have a problem. Many of us have a problem. That's why we're asking for money, right? But the weight of your writing should be more the solutions. What are you going to solve with this grant rather than the woe is me, right? We don't use any of that language. I have no idea why I have the organized and logical. I think that was probably at the point when I was working on it when Derek said, "You're going to be filmed, like it's kind of like a live stream." I went, and I think I put that down as an extra one, but you can go past that. Here we go. It's one of my favorites. Okay. So, all you need is motivation to write a good proposal, and that is not true. You need fear, and you need an approaching deadline, okay? So I decided to put this up instead of wah, wah, wah around deadlines because I just wanted to point out a deadline is a deadline. If there is anything they will not move a half inch on, it is the deadline. A lot of your uploads for your big foundations are the ones that tend to get a lot of applications. It shuts off at midnight. You can't even upload it, right? So you don't have a choice. But if it's to email, oh my gosh, I about had a heart attack last night. So I wrote this whole grant, and I had in my head that I really wanted to go in on the 14th. But for some reason, the 15th was kind of bothering me. I go, maybe I want it on the 14th because I'm so busy on the 15th with my trainings and this thing tonight. And it was all done, ready to go, and somebody else wanted to look at it, so we were going to wait till today. So at 9:30 last night, I said, I got to check those guidelines again. This thing's like bothering me. Due before November 15th, okay? So you can be sure I sent out a Teams that said, you guys are in my rearview mirror now. I am sending this in, right? You're not looking at it because I worked hard on this. Had to get it in. A deadline is a deadline. There's just no wiggle room. Why would there be no wiggle room on a deadline? What's the Captain Obvious? It's a deadline. It has a lot to do with fairness, right? Yeah, absolutely, Kathy. It's about an even playing field, right? So I'm hoping that sticks with you more than any text that I could put up there, right? All right, let's keep going. What time do I have? Okay. So when you think you're done writing, you're going to proofread it, and then you're going to put it aside, okay? I always make sure that I have a night's sleep before I read it again, like fresh eyes, right? Because when you're working on it, you can put hours into it, and you begin to see what you want to see, not what's there, okay? It's a little creepy, but it's true. So if you can put it aside and look at it again, you will see it with fresh eyes. And then you're going to proof it again. And then if you are fortunate enough to have somebody else that will read it, always, always do that. Always do that. Now, if I am going to write a grant about how to knit sweaters for penguins, do I have to look for somebody else that knows a lot about knitting sweaters for penguins?
No, because your funders aren't going to know about it.
You know what? I actually hired Shara to come today. Just carry me, will you?
Where's my check?
That's exactly it. It's better to have somebody that doesn't know your industry to read it, because if they don't understand it, it's probably likely that the funders don't know anything about knitting sweaters for penguins, okay? So you get somebody else. There's two kinds of people to have read it. Huh?
Common sense people.
Yes, yes. So you want somebody to read that's common sense, that's going to go, boy, I have no idea what you're talking about. But you also need your grammar experts, okay? You need your, punctuation, spelling, sentence structure police, okay? The nastier they are. Like, I used to have this administrative assistant. She's like a pit bull around, grammar and all that stuff. And I always felt like I was going to the dentist. Like, you didn't want to go for that cleaning, but after everything was done, I'm ooh, I'm feeling pretty good. So after she, did everything she did with my document, it hurt my ego for 7 seconds. And then I was so happy to know that I was submitting something that was clean, right, and ready to go. So that's the benefit of having somebody else proof it, and I would encourage you to do that. Quick on the life cycle of a grant. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to put this training together. This stuff right here. Not being concise, not any of the other stuff we talked about, but the life cycle of your proposal. Because I can't tell you how many times people write the proposal and they get the grant and then nothing happens after that. And you have likely lost an opportunity to apply again with any level of success, okay? So real quick, an RFP is going to come out saying, look, we're looking for people to apply, or an application is opened, like they did with the Dream It, right? If there's a webinar opportunity, go. There's an online webinar, okay? Snoozer, it's going to be snoozer, I promise you that. Go. Why am I telling you to go? You will. Why else? Why else? Huh? Show your face. You're invested, right? Okay? Now, if you're in the room with 60 other people, they'll see your name as registered, but they may not, make eye contact with you. But when you go to a webinar, it says, I'm invested, okay? And it is a really strong message. Then you're going to prepare your application. When I work on any application, I always put it in a Word document. So in your packets, I took out the Dream It application that they're using. Am I saying that right? Is it Dream It? Dream It Create. You create it. Okay. So that's in your packet. And what I did is I showed you how I take a grant. I copy it off the portal, okay, into a Word document. Do not copy it with all the blocks and the drop-down menus. You will lose your mind. Use that, whatever that option is furthest to the right that is just text, okay? You don't ever want to work on your proposal in the portal, okay? It is one of the riskiest things you could do. Okay? So I always take everything and I put it in Word and I do what works for me. So for me is to have my key sections bolded. What I do is anything that needs to be uploaded, a budget, a 501c3, I highlight it. Yellow means it's got to be uploaded. So I have these few tricks that get my head in the game, right? And you will come up with your own to keep things organized. And when you are uploading your application, you want to make sure that you save it, okay? But look at your portal, and is that an option? Does it say save? And you can go on to the next page, or save and exit, or is there no save? Because you probably can't. So you really want to look at that and make sure you understand what your options are once you are uploading it. So here's where I'm gonna put myself out there with submit button, like you have never seen anybody put themselves out there with submit button. So the submit button, and your submit button is on your portal, or submit button is also when you do the email and you hit the send. It's like a same submit button. I have unexplainable anxiety and fear about that submit button, okay? And what's interesting is I've never had a bad experience. And still, when I upload that grant, I have to and then I'm still not ready. I go take a walk, I use the restroom, I come back. Did anybody move anything? I'm convinced it's gremlins that came overnight and did something with this thing. So I have this real hesitancy that I hope you never experience. And guess what? You're gonna. So you can chuckle at me, but when you start writing grants, okay, and you hit that, you gotta hit that submit button. Why is there such angst? Why is it like? Yeah, I'm always worried about that. But when you hit it, that's it. That's it. Okay, so I just talked about my anxiety. This is me after I hit the submit button, okay? Because I don't have any choice now, okay? I could think of 10 things that I did wrong or forgot. So I am seeing stars and rainbows and unicorns. I am like, after you hit it, it is such a good feeling. So I want, if anybody ends up falling into that pattern, I want you to be honest and let me know. And you will. There'll be somebody. So we're going to keep doing the life cycle. You're going to get email confirmation probably that they got your grant. And then you're going to wait, and you're going to wait. You're going to wait 6 months. You might wait 8 months. You're going to wait so long you forgot you applied for it, okay? It is a long wait, okay? You'll get a, I'm sorry, the Dear Jane or Dear John letter or whatever, and then or you'll get a congratulations. We're going to be giving you a grant. Pay attention because a lot of grants today come with your need to sign an agreement. The worst thing for you to do is get so excited that you got a $5,000 grant. The funder has to remind you, hello, are you going to sign the agreement? Because you ain't getting money until you do that, okay? So it's right about here that people stop, okay? And I want you to pay attention to the rest of them because they are so important. So if you get if you got told by email that you're getting a grant, and if you haven't, it's coming from an email that is not one of those don't reply or what, you know what they are. If it comes from a person, it is very appropriate to write back right then, just a very short, you can't imagine how excited I am to get this news today, okay? Yeah.
I got this grant. What? No way. Thank you so much. I have sent this. I have voice to text this exact message back to a funder.
You know what? I'm not gonna go with that. That's you. You could carry that off. I could not carry that off. They're like, what? So you definitely have, don't get an email and not acknowledge it, okay? You've got to acknowledge it. If it's an email, you can acknowledge. Some of them you can't. That's not your thank you. Be real clear, that's not your thank you. This is where Perkins, oh my gosh, NewVue does mini grants. And this is also a piece that made me realize how much people could maybe benefit from knowing the whole life cycle of a grant. Because it's going to impact your ability to do it better the next time, easier the next time, whatever. So you are going to not do your formal thank you until the money is in your hands. Now that's different than what Shara talked about when you're reimbursed. When you're reimbursed for funding, you should just do your thank you then. But you do your thank you after that check's arrived. And that thank you is more than 3 sentences, okay? They just handed you 4,000 or 2,000 or 10,000. And you're going to thank them for what they gave you, include what it's for, include the impact it's going to have. Take it right out of your proposal, okay? They're not going like this. Here's the proposal, here's the thank you. They're not. So just use some of that, right? You don't have to write it all over or start from the beginning. Just use that. Make sure that they have a meaningful thank you is what I call it, meaningful. Track your activity as your grant unfolds, okay? Whether it's a number of people involved, whether it's a number of projects, whether it's things sold, anything that you've accomplished, do your best. Don't say, I'll remember it. I'll remember this in a year when I'm sitting down to write it. I promise you, you won't, okay? We're all busy, so write that. Make sure you write it down. And then many times you will have to do a use of funds report. And I have a lot of them that I have to do at 6 months to let them know, update them, how my grant's going, how much money have I spent, where did I spend it, how many have I served, am I off track, and if you're off track, why? I could be off track, and that doesn't mean I'm not going to get money the next time, as long as I have a good reason why I'm off track, and how I'm going to get myself back on track, okay? Things happen. And then at a year, typically, I don't know how it works for artist grants, you know, in terms of an individual getting it rather than somebody that's picked a fiscal sponsor. All right, I'm rushing. So this is in your packet. This was some quick stuff that I found for sources that you might want to hop on and like mass mocha. A lot of these not only are they sources for grants, but they're the sources for the newsletters I told you to hook up with, okay? So check those out. And there's a ton more. What? Yeah, yeah. Thanks for that, Dan. See, I don't dabble in that stuff, but I certainly feel like I hear it a lot. So I'm glad that we have that endorsement. So, where do we go from here? So before we do that, what's my time? All right. Does anybody have like maybe not a life or death question, but does anybody have a question that they thought, I wish we had talked about this? DG, what do you have?
How do you predict how many people would come to your event, especially if it's an event that hasn't happened before? Like, okay, yeah, I want to do an exhibition, but and so the exhibition would have a few themed events, but it would also have free admission, so people could just come and see the art. So there's nothing like that that's happened in Fitchburg before, so I don't like have something to compare it to. So,
Right. You know who I think is a good source? And I ask questions a lot. I think that's a great question. Nobody's going to hold you to the number, right? So if you say, my hope is that 30 people are going to walk by my work, and you have 20, that doesn't mean next year you're not going to get money from them, okay? You just want to be in the ballpark. A question like that, and correct me if I'm wrong, any of the artist people, how do you sort of judge that? I wonder if Jessie Olson is somebody at the
yeah, I'm gonna see her tomorrow.
Yeah, maybe she's somebody that has any, like, she might have a measure that she uses I know nothing about, right? But ask around and ask other people and Google it. I bet somebody has asked the question. It'll be there. Thank you for that. What other questions? Come on, guys.
I was going to say, if there are other art organizations in the area that have had similar or comparable exhibits, most of them keep track of the attendance to their exhibits. So you could maybe talk to them and get an idea.
guest book, write their name in.
And you know what? You put right in your application. I interviewed some nearby, blah, 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 whatever they are. And this seems to be the experience. So I am targeting this. Okay?
What's the capacity of the venue or space that you're using? Right? Like, because you're, as artists or whatever, you assume that it's going to be sold out and it's going to be at capacity no matter what.
Yeah.
Now, if it holds 400 people and you're just like, it's going to be an intimate event, I only need 50 people, also better, right? Like, you're at least defining your audience. That's in my experience, defining the audience rather than worrying about the number of the people is more important.
You're going to find when you look at some of these grants that I gave you the examples, some of these sources want to give you a grant for professional development. Some of them want to give you a grant to expand your work, right? Some of them want to give you a grant because they want to know that you are going to gather 30 kids in Fitchburg that would never have access to a ukulele, okay? And there is somebody, what is the woman's name? Right. I saw a grant. I was came out of my seat. This is months ago. I go, this is it. We can have little kids have their own free lessons. And it was just at a time that was so busy. It was busy for her. It was busy for just anybody I could have connected. But that's an example of the kinds of grants you could go for, right? What are some other questions that people have that they're, as we wind down, you're like, would have liked this. Come on, Kat.
At a church. So the where, I know, might be difficult if it's a religious organization. Have you run into issues with that?
It's an easy solution.
Yes. Sorry.
No?
Yes.
Okay.
Depending on the funding source, we have our studio is inside of First Parish Church, and in applications when we mention them, it just doesn't feel like they even look at it. In applications where we don't, and we just mention the address, goes a little bit more smoothly.
I think another way to handle that is to say, we're fortunate enough to have this free space or this space at a reduced cost. Our work is in no way connected to the work, and I'm not sure if I'm using the right language, of the church. You can draw that distinction, because you're right. That is it is unfortunately a big deal breaker for a lot of, and they have to for whatever reasons.
It's also, if it's specifically a religious thing, like if you're doing something at a religious service, they couldn't fund it. But if you're doing something that happens to be in the church, but it isn't about religion.
It's not connected, yeah.
Then it's,
Yeah.
it's not.
You can
always
definitely
deal
get
breaker.
around that.
And we work with an organization that we're even working with a religious organization, and as long as you're specifying that the work that you're providing to the community that you're providing it to, so you're completely separating any sort of religious affiliation to the work that you're providing to them. You can even, sometimes they may even have you write like a note when you're sending in your paperwork, specifying that none of the hours that you provided to that particular community was in any way affiliated with the religious entity. Usually that's how they'll have you sign something to prove that you didn't do that.
So I just want to make sure we have a where do we go from here? Because, we talked about a lot, and I hope you enjoyed what we were able to cover. Like I said, we could stay together for a long, long time to get into the nitty gritty. But I wonder if there's an opportunity. I want to stay as a connection and a support while you're doing your work. But I also think that there's incredible connections and support. I'm by no means an expert. And there's a lot of people in this room that have something to offer. Do we come together again? We don't have to answer this tonight. Do I do a webinar? Hey, if you're doing nothing, we're going to do an online, get a glass of wine at home, and we're going to talk about whatever, right? We can, maybe we'll send out an email and ask. And some people will say, you know what, I'm good. I don't need anything else. And there's no harm done in that. Any closing thoughts on your time tonight that you want to?
Glad I came.
Oh,
Thank you.
I am glad you came. And I'm glad that you participated, because I can't stand hearing myself up here after a while. So thank you for being a part of it. You are leaving me smarter than you found me. And that's not a joke. I usually ask that at the beginning. Just leave me smarter than you found me, and you have. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night, folks.